Tell me when we're live.
We are.
Oh,
we
we're
are
live.
live. We are always live. Let's see. How do we do this? Let's go to here.
Got to stay safe.
Yeah, no kidding. I should have brought my my scarf as well, just to scarf it up.
Scarf. You have like 80 scarves showing. I've got like one.
I know. I could always throw on this bad boy.
What is that?
Modric. Or I could go with this is a good one too. It's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I thought this was my fuck fascism one.
Oh yeah.
I don't know where that one is.
I
don't know where that one is.
I have that one. I have the fuck Trump one too.
I don't have that one.
Oh, you're missing out.
I'm sure that was probably by the same people who did that one.
It was, yes.
And all right, let's see. So let's get here. Let's open up our first 11. Let's see if we're actually live. We are live.
So you should tweet out the link.
Let's go. Let's get the link. And then we will, let's see. So I should just tag Jake and Matt.
Yeah, Seth was on last time too.
Of course he was. The first 11 pod is actually on the air. This is clearly if you have no time in your hand, or if you are at Flying Goose, at Jake, or at Seth. All right, tweet all.
So I guess we should start talking.
I mean, I guess that's kind of a thing. So this is the First 11 podcast. I'm Abram at Mind of Abram. That's Evan Ream at Evan Ream. Very creative, Evan. And we are here to talk about some, I guess, sort of soccering, I guess would be the best way to put it. But there's not really a whole lot of soccer going around. So instead, we're going to talk about some very loosely soccer-related topics. How's life, Evan?
Literally nothing has changed since whenever the last time we did this. So what about you?
I mean, it's kind of the same. I got to do I'm getting constant emails today because we went back to e-learning, distance learning today. So that's a whole lot of fun. A lot of emails, a lot of like questions, a lot of how do I reteach this when I can't see a kid. So, that's a thing that happened. Or a thing that is in the process of happening. I literally just got 5 emails a couple seconds ago. I don't know if you heard the beep on my X.
No. Is it a lot of questions about like why can't you stream yourself better and better quality too? Or
no. See, that's the thing is, when I'm teaching during the day, my kids are like doing their schoolwork, and now it's you get to this moment in the day, and everyone's on Netflix and Hulu.
Yeah.
And so I look like a pixelated mess.
Yeah, I can't even. That's necessarily you.
All right, so let's just jump in and let's go. I was gonna say let's start light, but there's not like nothing we're talking about is light. I mean, let's go with this one because this is sort of the closest thing we have to a light one, and then we'll get slightly heavier as we go in. So, first topic on the First 11 podcast, whatever we're called nowadays. There it is. Soccer scars are the best thing about being a soccer fan today.
I mean, I guess I'd have to agree. At where I'm located, I don't know about you, Abram, but where I'm located, you have to wear something across your face if you're going to go into public, like the grocery store or anywhere to buy foods. And so I've been, I don't want to, buy a mask because I don't want to take anyone for somebody who actually needs one. I don't understand the people who are still like, not reading the news and hoarding the masks. So every day I go into the store, I just put on a different scarf and basically try and look like a European or South American fan who's trying not to get identified by the police. But yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten any use, clearly, as you can see, of the like 120 scarves that I've ever worn. So this is, I mean, the best time I've ever had to use them, I guess.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the. I have these behind me. They are, and they have been for the better part of 10, 15, 20 years, however long I've had some of these. None of these for that long, because most of these teams weren't founded that long ago. The only purpose I've really ever had for them is hanging them on my wall. I went to yesterday, or not yesterday, golly, Monday or Tuesday, I went to Walmart and Publix because I had to do my grocery shopping. You know, I've got kids, so we go to grocery stores a lot more than you, Evan.
Yeah.
The funny thing to me was when I went into Walmart, every single person in Walmart had a mask on, like across the board. It was no like questioning about it. There were like, I wouldn't say blaring, but there were loud announcements every couple of minutes on, you know, help us stay safe during this difficult time, blah, blah, blah. So I went to Publix, which in my head is sort of this more high-minded grocery store. I don't think y'all have. Do you have Publix in California? It's not Whole Foods, but it's 3 or 4 steps down from Whole Foods. It's, you know, it's got organic food. It's got a wider variety. If you're a vegan, you can actually get food there.
In Alabama?
In Alabama.
Whoa.
So they're huge in Florida. It's a huge thing in Florida.
Okay.
It's not Trader Joe's big, but it's a huge, huge thing in Florida. So so I went to Publix with the more high-minded store. No one wearing a mask. Like no one. They still had the loud announcements, but I was just like, this is not what I expected. I kind of expected to walk into Walmart and it was going to be people on top of me and no one in a mask and no one taking any precautions. And then walk into Publix and everyone stayed 30 feet away from each other. I don't know. It's weird to deal with. It's difficult to deal with. Is this whole, you know, how do I explain this? My kids are like, oh, I want to go to the grocery store with you. I'm like, nope, stay home.
Yeah.
I don't want you to die.
That's a good question. I don't have kids, so I can't answer it.
You have nothing. All right. So, but I mean, you are Northern California.
Yes.
You know, and you are you're still in Davis, I believe.
I am.
And your home, no, let me stop. So it would be fair to say more liberal than Alabama.
I think that's pretty fair to say. Yes.
All right. How do you feel the overall reaction to this has really been there?
I mean, you know, honestly, I think, you know, for the most part, people are following the rules. I think there's a general sense that, and I don't know what the national media is, but their national opinion is, but there's a general sense that pretty much the governor's doing a good job, that all the shutdowns make sense. I mean, people fairly well are social distancing and staying inside and following the precautions. And I think that's why you're seeing California, especially Northern California, do pretty well in this sort of situation compared to nationally. And there's obviously also a a huge distrust of the current administration in the White House. And yeah, that's sort of been the response. And a lot of people have very negative opinions towards Trump, especially for the way that, well, they already did it before this, but for the way that he's handled it, and for the way that he's essentially acted like a child and turned this into a whole situation where he's trying to blame stuff on other people or yell at reporters who ask him legitimate questions, or just deflect instead of giving people actual answers, or like actually trying to figure out ways to solve the problem, or like actually doing good work. You know, that's the general opinion.
See, and that's not what we see down here quite so much. Before we get too politically into it and turn this into the the 538 podcast, I think we will jump on to one that's slightly less political. Grant Wahl was laid off this last week by Sports Illustrated. Longtime soccer reporter, probably, I would say, if not the most respected, the most known soccer journalist in America, or the most known American soccer journalist, I guess would be the way to put it. He was laid off. There were some memos that were going around him from Maven SI. And our number 2 on the First 11 podcast says, Grant Wall deserved better, or at least a smidgen of respect from SI/Maven.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the situation and the finances were like that. I mean, I wouldn't compare myself to Grant Wall in any way. I mean, he's number 1 in terms of soccer journalists, American soccer journalists, in my opinion. And he wrote, one of the best 3 or 4 books on that an American has ever written about soccer, and the Beckham Experiment. I mean, that book was just incredible. Longtime supporter and champion of the game. Great writer. He was really good at, because there have been writers who have been good at either like reporting and breaking news, and I'm not going to name names, but I think we can all think that there's some writers who are really good at having scoops, and there's some writers who are really good at feature writing, right? And he was good at both, and he was one of the few that excelled at both. So it's unfortunate. It's a sign of the times. It's, that being said, that's a sign of where Sports Illustrated as a magazine, where our news media is going in general. So, I mean, it's hard to really say, like, he definitely deserved the respect, but it's hard to really say if he deserved better just because everybody's getting laid off right now. And, if there's no sports, then how are you going to write about sports? We had trouble coming up with, and I don't want this to take away anything from Grant, because I've met him a few times. He's a good guy. I don't mean any disrespect, but literally everybody's getting laid off. And like I said, there's no sports. We even had trouble coming up with 11 topics for the first 11 today. So, what are people going to write about? So it's sad to see, but I don't really know if he stands out among any of the other thousands of people who lost their jobs.
See, and to me, the only reason why he does stand out at all, or really, it's not even so much him laying off and him standing out in that way. It's the way that it seemed to have been handled by SI Maven, where you've got the memo that was circulated online about him being someone who was making X amount of money, which he claims, he's like, I was making nowhere near that much, and them saying that he drew, I wish I should have pulled it up with me, but minimum interest or minimum clicks to the website. And it's just sort of, SI is not good, and it hasn't been good for a while. And it really feels like Maven, like when I Googled Maven reporter layoffs, it went back far before this last week. Yeah. It went back to mid-September. September 2019, October 2019, there was a good number. And then just continued in November, December. I think Grant Wall just happens to be not only the biggest one as of now, definitely the most known one. He's got, close to 1 million followers on Twitter, which, it's not a perfect metric, but it gives you an idea of how influential is the wrong way, but it gives you an idea of how much people know that person. And so the battle that took place seemed to be, they said they were going to give a 30% pay cut. And he said he was fine with that, but not beyond this stage of the quarantine.
Right.
And there were 31 people who were just straight up let go. And it seemed to be that this was him getting on his, I believe it was Instagram account, complaining about Maven reading it, Maven laying off, and then Maven dragging his name through the mud, which I don't work in business at that stage.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you put it.
I didn't see that part. So then, I guess I would say he definitely, I just thought he just got laid off, and I didn't know about all the details. So he definitely, given the circumstances, does deserve better than that, because that was the big thing for me, right? When I don't even know if I'm technically laid off at the newspaper yet. They just sort of cut my hours to 3 a week. And the way they did that was they just called me one morning and told me on like a Monday at like 10 a.m. And it wasn't like, hey, we're going to get you through the next couple of weeks. And then like, so you maybe you have some time to do something. It was just like, hey, we can no longer pay you immediately. Like, okay, great. Yeah. Like, thanks. Like a heads up would have been. I mean, if I'm gonna leave you guys, I'm gonna give you some heads up. So why shouldn't you do the same for me? So yeah, I mean, maybe I'm wrong in saying that. Maybe I wasn't. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but yeah, Grant Wall deserves better. I think that.
And fair enough, sort of to put what you said is kind of everyone deserves better, but
yeah,
how do we go about doing that?
Exactly.
All right, so let us move to our topic 3 on the first 11. American professional soccer teams that own their own stadiums are better prepared for the aftermath of this quarantine than are the ones who rent, borrow, or share stadiums.
I guess I suppose that depends on if they're done paying them off, the stadiums. Like, are the Columbus Crew done paying for their original stadium? I'm sure they are. Because if they're not done paying for their stadiums, then they still got to pay for it. But like, if you're just renting, you don't have to pay, right? I mean, you can there are probably provisions. I know that I was listening to Malcolm Gladwell talk about this on the Bill Simmons podcast a couple of weeks ago, where a lot of contracts have what's called like act of God provisions in them, so that if something like this happens, like certain things are null and void. So I wonder if some of the teams who are renting their stadiums, which I think are very few at this point, trying to, like, who's still renting? I guess because a lot of the teams, I was going to say like the Revs, but the Revs aren't renting because they're the same ownership group. I guess the Fire might be the only team. I mean, I think if you own your own stadium, you're probably on average definitely going to be better off. But if you got a lot of payments left, if you just opened up a brand new stadium, what was our last one to open?
LAFC.
Yeah, but those guys have so much money; they're going to be fine.
I mean, technically, also Atlanta United.
Yeah,
I think is the same year. Is that correct? I don't know. They're within years of each other, but you've got Cincinnati in the process of I doubt they're still breaking ground on it. I doubt Nashville's still breaking ground, so there's a team that rents. Miami, I doubt, is still breaking ground. I don't entirely know what's going on there. It sounds like I don't know if that is a college stadium or if that is a what do they call it? Temporary stadium, a temporary situation. So there's another one who may be renting. I think there's two ways to look at this. One, you've got New England Revolution, you've got Atlanta United, where it's one ownership group. Seattle Sounders, I don't think it's the same ownership group as the Seahawks, so there's probably some crossover there. But those stadiums are going to be fine. What I'm more concerned about are the secondary revenue streams in these stadiums. So, like, for example, the XFL folded this last week.
Did it?
There's a couple. It did.
So
there's a couple. He said, well, it really is if you consider how this second version of the XFL.
They were doing well.
They were doing well. They were getting fans out. They were playing in smaller venues. They weren't trying to directly compete with the NFL. And a lot of them were using Major League Soccer stadiums, soccer-specific stadiums. So now you've got like Audi Field, which was home to whatever the DC XFL team was called.
The Defenders.
And is it really?
The DC Defenders.
Probably. Well, they've lost that tenant. So that tenant was supposed to provide them with a new field at the end of the season, if I recall correctly. So they were going to play their game, and then they were going to replace the entire turf, or not the turf, but they were going to replace the grass at the end of the XFL season. That's money off of DC United's hands. And suddenly, they're going to have to pay for it. Someone that's not them is going to have to pay for it. What about concert venues? Say you built that new LAFC stadium, and you were going to hold a couple concerts there over the year. And that was going to help you pay for some of the insurance, some of the stadium, some of the money that you borrowed from the city government. You're not going to be able to host that now. So are you now going to have to pull back on player spending? Are you now going to have to pull back on something else? So it's really, there's not a good or a bad way with this. It seems like everybody is screwed. Chicago Fire might actually be a little bit less screwed because, I'm sure they're paying for some maintenance, but they're not paying for all of the overhead costs for Soldier Field. So,
Yeah, but they also paid a lot of money to get out of their last lease, like right recently. Yeah, I mean that being said, I don't think really anybody who owns a team is going to be really hurt at all by this. I think most of them
Yeah.
probably have that much money because they're good at making money and saving money. So I think the people who are going to get out of this on top are going to be a lot of the same people who own soccer teams or are, already were rich going. It's not going to be people like you and me for sure.
Like me.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
So let's move on to topic number 4. The USSFDA is folding, and it is a thing that's happening.
Yes.
So when we're looking at the USSFDA, for those of you who don't know, it's more or less as the Developmental Academy League that the USSF has run since 2009. The girls have been running since 2017. There's clearly some issues as far as how the women's side, I keep saying the women's side, and it truly is girls this time, but there's difference between how the girls side is running and how the men's side is running. Whereas the men, it's a lot of MLS and USL programs, whereas the women's side, all those NWSL teams are mostly in a different academy program. And to me, I'm not sure if this is, I've read a lot about this over the last couple of days just because I'm interested in it. To me, and I'm sure I'm wrong because Twitter's going to tell me I'm wrong, Twitter has been breaking this down like, well, there goes the U.S. men's national team. There goes the U.S. women's national team. Where are we going to get our players from? And I'm not getting that same feeling based on all of the research that I sort of did about it. Now, I'm not Travis Clark. I don't have the information. He's probably one of the better people in the country to give you a better idea about this. But as I read about this, it kind of feels to a point where you've got different teams playing in that USSFDA. You've got your MLS USL teams, and then you've got sort of Abram School of Soccer Excellence. Because Abram School of Soccer Excellence wants to play in the USSFDA because then I get to tell people we're playing in the USSFDA.
Yeah.
It's going to let me attract better coaches. It's going to let me charge a little bit more to the parents. And who cares that we're losing 10-0 to the FC Dallas Academy, or we're losing 11-0 to the New England Revolution Academy, or Atlanta United Academy is coming and, stomping us 21-1. We scored a goal against the Atlanta United Academy. That's another point that I can sell. I don't fully understand why people are. You know what I do? I do sort of understand why people are looking so negatively upon this, but on that same hand, it seems like MLS is going to form their own developmental academy league. So MLS teams will play MLS teams. You're going to have your USL teams with their developmental academies are going to create their own leagues. Maybe they'll be in the USL one. And the NWSL, they pretty much weren't playing in the USSFDA anyway. So I'm not sure why people are so mad at the USSF for, well, I do understand because everyone's always mad at the USSF. But they've pulled the funds. They've said, we're going to save $8 million by doing this. And it's not really, should the USSF be over soccer overall? Yeah. But is the USSF really in charge of development in a country of 350 million people? That's where I feel a little bit less sure about them truly making a mistake about this.
Yeah, it's so difficult in this country because it's so big and there's so many different, cultures and just regions of the country. I mean, you take a country like the Netherlands, which is about the same population as Northern California, but I think about a third of the size, and everybody is so on the same page as each other because you can drive from one side of the country to the other and it takes 2 hours, and so everybody has all these really high level discussions. Everybody gets together and does things that are in the best interest of the collective, and that's just not what we have here. And so that's why for years and years and years we've had several different systems in place, and nobody can really get on the same page just because I think it's impossible. At NorCal, Premier Soccer, we've talked about that. Honestly, like our national team might be better if we literally just took like California and got together and did all the development together, right? Or maybe even just Northern California and just figured it out all as one, just because we would have our resources more concentrated in one area and people would be more able to be on the same page. But yeah, I mean, I agree with most of your points, which is not a thing we used to do, but whatever.
It's sort of, it also kind of leads me down something else which I enjoy talking about a bit is, why is MLS, and I'm not sure, it kind of feels like they're moving a little bit away from this, where they give their franchises, their clubs, their teams individual areas that you can recruit out of here, but you cannot. So Atlanta United, you get Alabama all the way down to I-85, and then Houston Dynamo get Alabama up through I-85, although I'm sure that's changed now with, all these other teams in the area. So why? I mean, why shouldn't it be? I was reading this someplace, I believe it was Bob Bradley who talked about it. If there's a player in Ohio or Michigan or, Washington that he thinks will fit into the LAFC system, why should he be stopped from getting that player and seeing if he wants to come and train in LA with LAFC?
I think they're planning to phase that out, and I don't know if those territorial rights still even exist.
I'm not sure they do.
Yeah, I know that was the plan eventually, was to phase it out, because it's true. Like, yeah, LA Galaxy can only take on, let's see, 22 players in one age group in their DA. And so what if there's San Jose says like, well, hey, that 23rd player, we're interested in that 23rd player, but if that 23rd player, if they're in the LA's territorial rights, then LA can essentially block that player from developing overall. I don't really know what the situation with that is anymore, although I know one of the reasons why it took Sacramento so long to be announced as an MLS team was because there was some issue regarding the territorial rights of a city called Modesto between them and the Earthquakes. And I don't know if you know anything about Modesto, but you don't need to know. You ever seen the movie American Graffiti? It takes place in Modesto.
Oh, I'm of the belief that it's not really the USSF. I mean, Bradenton did not exactly serve the purpose. I mean, it kind of did, but it didn't really serve the purpose. You're always going to miss players. And sort of as we're getting more teams, as we're getting more USL teams, more MLS teams, more NISA teams, more USL League One, I think is still professional. I don't remember teams. You're just going to happen to uncover more players. Whereas before, a lot of it was just sort of, well, you did really good in this league, this academy, this tournament showcase that you paid $2,000 to play for. Now we're going to take you and put you in Bradenton and hope you work out.
No, the best way to work it out is honestly to make the rules as such so that it incentivizes teams to develop players. And I think MLS just did that with their new CBA, where they changed the percentage that you get from selling a player to a much higher percentage. I believe it used to be 50%, 75%, and now it's like 95%. And then they also added some incentives for homegrown players to be sold. So the way to develop players is to create a market with rules that incentivizes the development of young players, and then it'll probably solve itself. I mean, that's why, again, the Netherlands, that country I keep bringing up, is so good, because the only reason their clubs are still able to even stay somewhat relevant, sell out their stadiums, have a lot of fans, play in Champions League and Europa League, is because they don't have money from TV like the big four. I guess in Europe they refer to them as the big five sports leagues do, and they're not a big enough country to produce that many players, but they're creating the best players they can, giving them opportunities at a young age, and then selling them for a lot of money, then reinvesting that money back into the club.
And hopefully that's the direction where MLS, USL, NISA, whoever else I'm missing, begin heading. All right. Let's move on to this very long one, which was submitted by, what was it, USL Pony? I know he's a boy.
My guy, Evan, which is actually Evan. It's not me. I didn't do it.
Evan, so this is submitted by @EvanReam.
No.
Assuming all three are viable options, which would you prefer? 1, greatly reduced games with playoffs. 2, shortened season with an East and West champion. Or 3, regional cups or tournaments across multiple tiers of soccer. And this is obviously for soccer in the U.S. Our ticker only lets us fit so many words.
Yeah, when it returns, if it returns. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably just treat it like we talked about this a little bit last week. Treat it sort of like a lockout season. Figure out a way based on the schedule to do it. Maybe MLS, like I said, there's 20, 25. There's 26 teams in MLS, so to play everybody once would be 25 games. That's probably too many games. So maybe you just play in MLS. Maybe treat it like old baseball. You only play the teams in your league. So MLS just plays everybody in the Western Conference plays each other once. So that would be 12 games. Maybe you play your regional rivals a couple of times, hopefully get in 16, 18 games, and then have a truncated playoff system. Could be like there was one year in the NFL, it was like a strike shortened season, and they had like some crazy playoffs where like a bunch of teams made it. I can't even remember. It was, I think it was before there was like a lot of wild card teams, and they just had like a 1 through 16 bracket when there were only like 24 teams in the league or something like that at this time. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's not going to be a good solution, I don't think, regardless. I was thinking about this last night, really, that usually I have like what I think in my mind is a pretty good idea of what can be done in a situation to, figure something out. I'm just talking about in general. Right now, I literally have no idea what any of these leagues are going to do. I cannot possibly fathom how any of this is going to be figured out.
So let's take a second and look at this, because you took this from a very analytical standpoint, but this is asking for you to play fantasy baseball. They're asking what you prefer. So
yeah, okay.
Because at first I was gonna harp in on each of these and why each of them are dumb, but then I was like, wait, this is asking what I would prefer. Which, as that type of question, I like this a lot better. I don't want greatly reduced games with a playoff. I don't. What's the purpose of a playoff? If it's going to be a shortened season, that means it's going to be a shortened preseason. That means it's likely more injuries. So why tack that playoffs on at the end? A shortened season with East-West champs, yeah, I could get behind that. I think that's sort of what you were alluding to, is that idea of our East teams only play our East team, West only plays West, or maybe you even cut it down into 4 and you figure some way to break it down into 4 different regions. I don't know exactly how you do that. I'd have to look at an MLS map to see how things lay out. I do think it is the least likely, but I do think the one I would prefer would be a regional cup tournament across multiple tiers. Let's take our 4 professional leagues in America, right?
I don't know at this point.
I said, who knows? I mean, there are some NPSL teams and like local Sunday league teams that pay their players, and they're kind of professional too. But whatever. Let's take the ones that are under the USSF umbrella. Plus, NISA is under there as well. So NISA, USL 2, USL Championship, MLS. That's 4, I think. I'm bad at math. Let's split them into however you want to split this, and let's have our leagues. Let's go. You got Atlanta playing Nashville, playing Memphis, playing Chattanooga. That's maybe you throw the Miami, the 2 Miami teams and the Fort Lauderdale team in there, and you got one bracket, and you just go from there. And you get crowned the Southeastern champion. Or you take Detroit and Chicago, Detroit and NISA and Chicago, and let's see, who else is right in that area? Indy 11. And you just throw them all in one pool and you let them play. Now, are there negatives to that? Yeah, there are negatives to that. There's definitely going to be some games where you get some MLS team that does one of two things: either fields its lowest of the low players because they're playing a low-level team, or you get MLS teams that play their best of the best players and they start beating some of these NISA and USL 1 teams like 17, 18, 19 nothing, which from a fan perspective, that'd be fun. But on the same hand, say Nashville FC decides, all right, we're going to throw out our bottom of the tier players against Chattanooga FC. Well, Chattanooga's suddenly in that game. Now, I don't think this ever happens for the same reason I don't think ProRel is anywhere near. But if I'm picking, what would I prefer? I prefer that one. I don't mind watching a couple of 19-0 games if every once in a while I see Chattanooga tie Miami FC or what are they? Inter Miami FC 1-1 or potentially even beating Orlando City 0-1.
Sounds like the pointless Brazilian state championships that they have at the start of the season in Brazilian soccer. Yeah.
See, and I'm very pro US Open Cup.
Oh yeah, I mean it'll be fun in some ways, but
I mean we're already going to get maybe 10 games. That's going to tie into our next one. There's the amount of time that actually gets played, but I would flip out to see that. I got to see a couple of weeks back over in Orange Beach, Alabama. I watched Chattanooga FC play Memphis 905, the one Tim Howard owns.
Oh, did he play?
He actually did. So did I tell you that story? Did I tell you that story?
No.
So again, I decided to take my 11-year-old kid there.
Okay.
He's big soccer fan. It's like us and maybe a total of 6 other people in the stands. Most of them are like Chattanooga people who are friends with the players, whatever. And we show up, and my kid goes, "That guy in goal looks like Tim Howard." And I was like, "No." This is before he officially signed for the team. And I was like, no. I was like, "Don't worry about it." I was like, that's not Tim Howard. I was like, "We're kind of far away. You can't see it, but it's not Tim Howard because, he owns the team. He's retired. He's my age. Actually, I think he's younger than me, but it's not Tim Howard. Don't worry about it, kid." The next day we see the post on Twitter. It's like the picture of the Chattanooga goalkeeper next to Tim Howard.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I take that back. The next day we were at a youth soccer event, and Bill Elliott, who's Chattanooga's, he used to be the head coach. Now he is their technical director, is technically my son's U11 coach. And so we're just talking. He knows me through AFC Mobile, and we're just sort of talking. He goes, we went out there and we lost 1-0, but we did really well, especially when you consider Tim Howard was in goal. Like, wait, what? He goes, yeah. I was like, wait, that was Tim Howard in goal? He was like, yeah. I'm like, my kid told me that was Tim Howard in goal, and I said, no, there's no way. He's like, yeah, that was Tim Howard in goal. Anyway, so jumping down and sort of keeping the schedule thing in mind, MLS says it's extremely unlikely to resume play in May. No shit, MLS. No shit.
Yeah, I mean, well, our California Governor Gavin Newsom said that it's unlikely we would have sporting events until at least the fall in California. So, and I mean, as far as what governors are around the country are doing, I know that the East Coast and West Coast governors all made a pact to not reopen the states until they were all satisfied. So that way, they were all working together and making decisions that weren't based on one state trying to get ahead of another economically. So, I mean, if you have all the West Coast states and East Coast states doing that together, that's half the MLS teams. So,
jokes aside, and I hate to say this because again, we're going to turn this into the 358 podcast. Do we consider Florida to be East Coast?
No.
They're kind of their own thing.
East Coast is East Coast. I mean, it's on the East Coast, but when you say East
it's
Coast,
like DC through Massachusetts.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I'm so torn on this. I get what MLS is trying to do. They're trying to get people to go, no, it's definitely we're coming back. We're not folding. But at some point, you're going to have to pull the plug on the season. At some point, you're just going to have to say, this is not going to happen. We know it's extremely unlikely to come back in May. I mean, we're not idiots. Well, you and I aren't idiots. Well, we are idiots. We're not idiots when it comes to this. But most of their fans are not idiots. And we understand sort of the problems of coming back early. Now, there are people who don't. And there are people in several states that have MLS teams that are going to say, it's fine. It's fine. Go ahead, come back. Play in front of an empty stadium or play at a half capacity stadium. At this point, I wish MLS would just say, guys, I'm sorry. It's not going to happen this year.
Yeah. But I don't think they know, they can't, I mean, we don't know, the experts don't know. So, and who knows even if this is over, if everything will come back or not. So,
well, I was reading an article out of, was it Harvard? I'm 90% sure it was a Harvard research study that said there's going to need to be some form of social distancing until 2022. So even if sports do start again, which they're going to have to eventually, whether it's behind closed doors or not, they're going to have to restart. Let me phrase that. I hope that they start. It'll give me something to do if they play behind closed doors, even if it is like baseball and golf where people are tennis, where you're more than 6 feet apart for most of the time. People aren't going to crawl back in the stadium. There are places that will, without question. But it's just like, to me, saying it's unlikely to resume play in May, I just want them to say, we're definitely not starting in May. It's not a thing that's happening. I mean, we are halfway through April, and this thing doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, probably that's like the worst thing too, is that not knowing when. Like if somebody came out and like some scientist and was like, okay, by September 1st, everybody can go back, then that would be way better. Like, that's why everybody is freaking out right now, because we don't know how long this is going to be for. I mean, like, if you gave people the option that, okay, this is all going to be over by July 1st, but you're not going to know when it's over, retroactively, or everybody's going to tell you, you're going to know it's going to be over by September 1st, but you have to wait 2 extra months. I guarantee that people would take 2 extra months just so that they knew.
See, you say that because you're, I think, surrounded mostly by sane people.
Okay.
There was a block party next door to my house on Saturday.
Sweet.
There were cars up and down the street. I mean, they were nice enough where they stopped it at 7 o'clock. So
okay.
It didn't get dark out.
Well,
it went all coronavirus comes out at night. But I mean, it was insane. And you've got these people in North Carolina, the what is that stupid hashtag? The release free North Carolina on lock North Carolina, reopen North Carolina. That's what it was. With these people doing these massive protests because they think this is all this deep state plot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is why whenever people say our country is the best country in the world, I'm like, no, we're so bad at so many things. This is one in particular. Look how bad we screwed this up. We can't possibly be the best when we have shit like this happening all the time.
All right, so let's again, we're in that 358 category.
358.
Let's jump to one that's a little bit more fun. All right, so earlier this week, MLS sent a tweet out. I think I forwarded it to you. I'm not 100% sure. Let me just take a quick look at it. I did forward it to you. So MLS sent out this lineup. So of U.S. men's national team eligible players. And they said they should play a game against these U.S. men's national team players that are based in Europe. So for the MLS side, you've got Guzan, Cannon, Robinson, Long, the dude from FC Dallas, whose last name I can't say yet. You will like it. Yeah, that's the one. Areola, Altidore, and more. On the European-based side, they have Timothy Way, Josh Sargent, Claudio Reyna. Claudio. Did I say Claudio? Gio, yeah, not Claudio. Good God, that's how I know I'm old. Gio Reyna, Pulisic, Adams, McKinney, Dest, Miazga, Brooks, Robinson, and Zach Steffens. And what they said was that a game between these two sides would be fun. So MLS said a side between USMNT eligible MLS players and USMNT eligible players in Europe would be would be fun to watch. MLS is silly.
I mean, it'd be fun to watch because at this point we'd be getting a new soccer game. I mean, I don't think talent-wise, I mean, there's a reason why the players who are in Europe, and there's a reason why the players who are in MLS are in MLS. While I don't always think that it's true that just because somebody plays in Europe means they're better, and I don't always think that some of the European teams are better at developing players than some of the MLS teams. On the vast majority of cases, the majority of European players are better than the majority of MLS players. And that's the European players playing in one of the big 5 leagues plus, Netherlands, Belgium, whatever. But like I've seen, I don't get what people like. People will have their opinions, but I mean, just in this last year, I've been to games in Portugal, been to games in the Netherlands. Neither of those leagues, outside of the top 2 or 3 teams, I mean, I think MLS has just as good of teams as most of the teams in those 2 leagues, and I think it's a fallacy that MLS is nowhere close to those because I mean, look, I went to Portugal, I went to Benfica, I went to Sporting, I went to Porto, I went to Braga. LAFC is as good or better than any of those teams, and people don't seem to understand that.
Well, I think the problem here with is the 1-to-1 matchup because as we look at here, you've got Josh Sargent who's on a team that's in the Werder Bremen. Definitely, they're going to be relegated. They absolutely are. But I think you hit sort of the big point, which is MLS is they're in the process of making that turn into being not Netherlands maybe as far as an overall talent, but Netherlands as far as we're going to develop and sell players. That's how we're going to stay in business is by selling players.
Yeah.
And as I'm looking at these 2 lineups, there is 1, maybe 2, at absolute maximum case, 4 players that could crack that 11. No, you know what? I'm going to take 3 because I was thinking Josie, but the more I think about Josie, he's old, broke down Josie. Even if I'm not sure he takes Sargent over. Like you've got Jordan Morris might be able to crack that lineup. Zach Long might be able to crack that lineup.
Zach Long.
Or what did I say? Zach Long. Zach Long is a player that I coach.
Aaron Long.
Aaron. Zach Long is a player I coach. He is not making that lineup.
You don't think
so? And Cannon is absolutely. I think Cannon makes that 11 today. I also don't think I think he's in that. I think he takes out. He's over Robinson. But I also think, and you switch sides and you put Dest on the left. But on the same hand, I don't think he's in MLS much longer. I think if this season had played out, he would have been sold in the summer window. So take that for what it is. But none of these other players, maybe in a couple years, Miles Robinson is good enough. The dude in FC Dallas, whose name I can't say, I'm pretty high on. I think he might be able to make it, but as of today, he's not there. Areola and Leggett? No, I don't think so. I don't know. Josie is not objectively bad. How dare you, Matt Ream?
Yeah, Matt Ream with the comment section. Josie is objectively bad. Josie Altidore is good at soccer. Josie Altidore, and I know that everybody in the Netherlands could do this. Josie Altidore scored like 30 goals in a season in the Netherlands. And again, everybody in the Netherlands can score 30 goals. But I mean, just because he wasn't good enough to make it for a really shitty Premier League side that like didn't offer him any service, doesn't mean he's a bad player. All right.
I don't think he makes it today. I think today, and I wouldn't even say he's objectively bad. I just think he's not who he used to be. How old is he now? He's
my age, so he's 30.
Yeah, so he's in his 30s now. He's getting into that stage where he's injured, but he's better than Josh Sargent.
He's better than. I mean, if there was a game that started today, he'd be the center forward option for the U.S.
If he was healthy.
If he was healthy. I actually think.
And to be fair, I think that's what MLS was saying, is if they were 100% healthy.
If the comment section, our huge watchers are going to love this next one. I actually think if the national team coach were coaching both teams, if Greg Berhalter was coaching against himself, then just in general, I think if the World Cup starts today, then if Josie was hurt, I don't think Josh Sargent would be starting. It'd be Giassi Zardes. Not to say that's probably correct, but Giassi Zardes, I believe I read the other day when he plays center forward for the national team, he averages it's like almost almost a goal every other game, which is obviously a rate that you would take anywhere in the world. He's better passer than people give him credit for.
I believe he was the leading goal scorer for them this year. That's insane to me. Because I would take both Josie and Josh Sargent over Giassi Zardes in that number 9 role.
That's fine.
All right, so here's the one I'm excited for. So I got my subscription to The Athletic, and one of the first articles I read was about the San Francisco Deltas.
Yeah.
The Delta. I'm gonna say Delta because that's what I have in the thing. So as I read through that article, or really not, I mean, what do you call it? Is it really? It's sort of a what do they call those? A verbal history of. First off, fantastically written. But as I'm reading it, I'm just like, I feel like I'm reading the plot to Major League, the 1988-89 baseball movie. So with that in mind, we talked a little bit about feature films the other day, and the San Francisco Delta story should be a feature film.
Yeah, I mean, when the Deltas first, came out with their name, they did all this crazy stuff. They released a name that was fake, and it was like, oh, hey, this is our first prank. They set up a bunch of weird domain names that didn't make any sense. They talked about doing all this stuff that didn't make any sense. They went to play in a soccer venue that historically everything had failed for a variety of reasons that everybody already knew before them. They started spending ridiculous amounts of money that they didn't necessarily have. And so I wrote an article for SB Nation about them being in the Tyson zone. The idea of the Tyson zone is that it's like Mike Tyson, right? You'd believe any story about him. If I told you that during this outbreak, Mike Tyson stole a box of scissors from an Office Max and went on a rampage stabbing people for their masks, you'd believe this story because it's Mike Tyson. You'd believe any story about them. So I wrote an article about the Deltas being in the Tyson zone. And so later, a couple weeks later, in the mail, I opened up my mail and they had sent me a framed photo of Mike Tyson cradling a tiger, and every single one of the owners signed the photo. I still have it because, first of all, that's awesome, but that only proved my point. And if you read the oral history by Jeff Reuter, you should definitely should. It's crazy, and there was stuff that he didn't even get to. That team just burned through money like it was none other, and did all this crazy stuff. Like, for instance, they had this rule. I went to their front office one day, and it was your average tech startup or whatever. I have a video on Facebook Live. I did it for NorCal Premier Soccer, and one of the strangest things they had was once you worked for the club for 1 year, the owner Brian Helmick would have an action figure of you made. So there were all these creepy action figures in the corners of front office employees. There's literally a Todd Donovan action figure. They're all in their Deltas gear, and Matt says it should be a film in the style of Basketball, which is an American classic film, by the way. Everything about them made no sense. And, halfway through the season, they were like, hey, we're fine. we're fine, we're fine. Oh, by the way, hey, can you support us and give us money? And they basically said, they were like, hey, we need your support. We need you to give us more money. And it wasn't like, hey, maybe our business model was bad. Hey, maybe we made a ton of poor decisions in financial spending. Hey, maybe we did all these things poorly. It was like, no, the fans aren't coming out, and that's why we're not going to exist. It's like, well, there was a variety of reasons why this wasn't going to work. And yes, it should absolutely be made into a movie, especially because they won the soccer bowl and because they gave away tickets for $5 at that game and they sold out. And after the game, the fans rushed the field, and I was at it. It's the only NASL game I've ever been to. And my thought was like, I wonder how many of these people know that the team is going to fold, because it had already been reported that the team was going to fold. And at that game, I was able to confirm, and they were giving away all their gear for free at that game. And I don't think anybody who was there realized that it was going to fold because they didn't really have a following.
The whole, sir, as I read through Jeff Ruder's story, and there's so much, I'm not going to share his full article because, I mean, I'm not an asshole. But there's this moment in it where I'm just like, this is a moment out of Major League. It's absolutely a moment out of that Major League movie where, let me find it. They say, we just rallied. So this is after the team has folded, or after the team was getting ready to fold, before the soccer bowl, after the 7-0 loss to the Cosmos in the, I believe it was the fall season. We have this statement in there where he says, we just rallied. We each got a bonus for every win. And we told ourselves right after that meeting, let's win every game and take all his money. That's a goddamn movie quote.
Yeah.
I don't know how to write movies, but everything about this is a feature film and is an interesting feature film, from being ineptly run. I mean, they had them apparently staying in very expensive hotels a very expensive apartment complex in San Francisco. Meanwhile, they're training on like a crap turf field surrounded by 2 soccer teams, where they were saying there were sessions where they'd show up and they'd just get sent home because it was too loud and the coach couldn't coach. He couldn't explain anything. He couldn't go over set place with them. I mean, first off, if you're not subscribed to The Athletic,
yeah, you got it.
You should join it today just for this article, because it's sad and hysterical, but also amazing and awesome. And if you know how to write a movie, if you have any script writing friends, have them read through this oral history, because it's been a long time since we've had a really good sports movie. I don't think we've ever had a really good soccer movie. But like Matt Ream has it on here, he says it should be a film in the style of basketball. It absolutely could and should be. And if you could write a film, this is that film. It's amazing. It's a fiery train wreck, and I friggin' love it.
Yeah, the only problem is that nobody's going to be interested in it because it's about the Deltas and nobody cared about them. So
you just cast some big name actors and you're good to go. Put Kevin Hart in the Rock.
No, that's fun. They had a campaign where they tried to get Kevin Hart out to a game, and it was the stupidest thing that I've ever seen. It was like let's get Kevin Hart out to our game. Like, yeah, like Kevin Hart's going to come to an NASL game.
How meta would it be if you cast Kevin Hart in the movie as Kyle Becker, which makes no sense? But and part of it is Kevin Hart as Kyle Becker trying to get Kevin Hart, the comedian, to come to a game. I mean, it works. It works. This is the greatest movie ever. All right. So let's move on to topic number whatever. I didn't number them today. So this last couple of weeks, NPSL did the top 10 NPSL players of all time. They had a lot of, they had Patrick Mullins, who played a couple seasons in NPSL and is now sort of an MLS journeyman. A bunch of other guys who kind of never really amounted to a whole lot. NPSL is fun. It's great. It's got a great culture behind it, but they're not necessarily known for creating stars like PDL used to be, although PDL is sort of changing as well. But on NPSL's list, the number 1 NPSL player of all time was Chris Wondolowski. So our statement says, NPSL named Chris Wondolowski the greatest NPSL player ever, even though he only played 15 games from the league. NPSL needs to know their players better.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring up PDL because I remember one time looking up the difference in like the alumni who have played in the NPSL versus the PDL, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's not even close. But I mean, what did they say that the Chris Wondolowski was the best player who'd ever played in the NPSL, or he was the greatest NPSL player ever?
The greatest NPSL player, not the best player to play in NPSL, which
Yeah.
I even question that, but the greatest NPSL player.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they probably do need to know their players, but there's a guy who plays for Sacramento Gold. God, I can't remember his last name. His name is like Manolo something, right? And literally, Sac Republic asked him to sign a contract. The first year Sac Republic was in what existed, and he was just like, nah, I'd rather go fishing. It's like this dude who's like 5'5", like way out of shape, and like just bangs in goals in the Open Cup like every single year. Like he's always good for 2 goals in the Open Cup. There's so many like players like that who've probably scored like hundreds of goals in the NPSL who are definitely better, but I'm sure that this is something that the NPSL just said because it's like a name and it's going to get more recognition and people are going to more read the headlines, and it's also like, get behind, it's going to get people behind the idea like, hey, if Chris Wondolowski played in the NPSL and I played, maybe I can make it to Major League Soccer after playing in the NPSL.
And honestly, and I wish I should have pulled up the list in front of me, but I'm just not going to do that because that's what we do on the first 11. The only other player whose name I even recognize, now I recognize Greg Hartley, who was a Chattanooga FC goalkeeper for a million years. I recognize him because after a game when I used to go to the Pensacola games, we heckled him for the whole game, and then afterwards he just came over and drank a beer with us. Uh-huh. So that's why I know him. But I would rather have it be some dude like that than be Chris Wondolowski, who played 15 games. 15 games. The only other name I recognized was Patrick Mullen, who played for the Jesters, who I remember watching in NPSL, and I remember watching him and going, Jesus, this kid's going to be a monster in MLS. And he was just kind of, he's an adequate role player. I think he's in, where is he, Houston now? I don't even know where he is anymore.
Yeah.
Chris Wondolowski just seems like not inadequate, but he is an inadequate, inconsequential NPSL career, but it's just such an inauthentic choice for what they seem to be going for with that list.
Yeah. Matt Ream's burner account, he's both of our viewers right now. It says if you try hard enough, anyone can play in the NPSL, and he's totally right. When I was in college in Ashland, Oregon, there used to be a team called the Southern Oregon Fuego. The year before, and my college club team, which was not very good, made up most of the Southern Oregon Fuego, and they went, I believe, 0-9 in the year before they folded. Made up of, and that was the point where we played a friendly against them, and like I was good enough to be on the Southern Oregon Fuego, and trust me, I'm not good enough to be in the NPSL if you're actually a good team. So.
Yeah, and that's always the thing with any of these summer leagues, especially NPSL and UPSL, is you have your top teams, and then you have a massive drop off after you get past those top maybe 10 teams in the NPSL and maybe 15 teams in UPSL.
Like FC Davis is straight up bringing in players who have played in MLS before, so
they'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on. We've got our number 10 and our number 11. So our number 10 on the first 11 says, the best soccer media book website to take up your time during this quarantine is.
Well, we just gave The Athletic a plug. They've been doing.
Yeah, I'm all about it today.
Yeah, I mean, they've been doing well. I've also really been enjoying a lot of the stuff that MLSsoccer.com has been doing. To be honest, they've been doing a lot of articles about. What it was like in '96. Doyle, Matt Doyle, who my brother hates, just put out a really comprehensive article on the 96 best foreign imports of all time in MLS. That was a really interesting long form article, but the Ringer's got some good stuff too. But as far as books go, I want to plug a book. I just read The Sound and the Glory by my friend Matt Pence. Really good story of Seattle Sounders first MLS Cup win. It's good stuff. If you like things that you enjoy, you might find that palatable.
Right. So I'm not doing a lot of reading right now just because it's still technically the school year and I'm dealing with emails. The thing that I said I was going to watch the other day and I decided to end up watching, I only got through one episode just because life. Apache on Netflix, which is the Carlos Tevez show I talked and said I was going to watch. If you don't mind watching a Spanish language show, it's pretty friggin' good. They have Carlos Tevez, like actual real life Carlos Tevez, who introduces each episode. So he comes on and he sort of gives you a little talk about what Carlos Tevez was doing during this time in his life. And then the acting is, I assume it's good. I don't know if it's actually good, but it's pretty good. It's pretty exciting. It's not really soccer related. It's more about like living in the slums of Argentina, but it's entertaining as all hell. It's so much better than the English game. And I don't get why people, I do. I guess it's because it's Spanish language. But I would think more people would be talking about it. And as I'm saying this now, I realize I need to get on Twitter once I'm done with this and have answered the 17 emails that have rolled in from my students and really plug the hell out of it. Because people should watch it. It's entertaining as all hell.
Also, I got to plug the First 11 podcast. That's one of the best media /books /websites to take up your time during this quarantine.
Especially if your name is Matt Ream.
Yeah.
All right. So our last one, speaking of, number 11 on the First 11 podcast says, it actually says base, not base because I typed it quick. Based on the grasping nature of these statements, this is the worst best episode of the First 11 ever.
I think it's the second worst best episode because the first worst best episode was the one where we acted like the LA Riot was a real soccer team and just did all of our stuff based us on the show Matador. You know what? I take back my last plugs for the last topic. If you can find Matador somewhere streaming, that show is phenomenal. If you want a quick 10 episode binge, check into the show Matador.
So the other day when I was trying to remember how to put the podcast up on Stitcher, iTunes, or not iTunes, what is it? Apple Podcast now. All the old episodes popped up, and the one that talked about Matador, I was like, "What the hell is this? I don't remember anything about this." So I clicked it open. Oh my god! I listened to it. I was like, "What the hell were we thinking? Why did we do this?"
We were trying to get on the show, like for reals.
That was when we had that was one of our most downloaded episodes.
Really?
Yeah, we had almost 1,000 listens to it. Now, most people probably listened to like the first 10 minutes and shut it off. So if you're looking for something to do, watch Matador, then download that episode of the First 11 podcast. Because what the hell else are you doing with your life right now?
Dude, Matador is phenomenal. It's just, look, it's the guy who ends up playing the most recent Terminator gets recruited to be a DEA agent because an undercover DEA agent because he can run a 4.340. But part of his undercover role is that he has to make a professional soccer team. And the guy, Gabriel Luna, is like, you can tell that he's just not good at soccer and never played in his life. So all the soccer scenes are horrible. And his boss is Alfred Molina. And then it turns into like a crazy science fiction plot. Oh my God. It's phenomenal. There's nothing better.
It's got to be streaming someplace. It's probably on YouTube if you look hard enough.
I think it might be. I own it on like iTunes. You might be able to find it on like you probably buy the whole iTunes series for like.
Why the hell do you own it on iTunes?
Dude, because I couldn't find it streaming anywhere, and like one night I was like, oh man, I don't want to miss any of these episodes. So like I think it was right after they go down to like Mexico and play in like some drug lords 3v3 tournament, but the losing team, like everybody gets executed or something like that. And I was like, I can't miss any more of these episodes. So I'm pretty sure I just like purchased, because I think the first episode was streaming for free on like the El Rey network, because that was they were trying to launch this Robert Rodriguez's like Spanish language based network based off of this show.
Which wasn't good enough.
And I'm pretty sure he directed the pilot. But I don't know if El Rey still exists, but that show got canceled after one season. It was probably one of the most disappointing moments in my life of following the game of soccer.
And for what it's worth, yes, the El Rey network is still around.
Really? Wow.
Got anything to plug, Evan?
Yeah. You know, my friends over in New England, they, they're still churning out episodes one after the other. So, I mean, you gotta tune into the Midnight Ride podcast. It's truly, it's better than ours. If you're still listening to this one, turn this one off and subscribe to Midnight Ride podcast and give them a listen. It's way better than what we have for you here.
Especially with all their recent EMLS action that's been going on up in New England.
Oh, has that been happening?
I'd like to plug stay-at-home orders.
Oh, yeah,
so
good call.
If you could stay at home as much as possible, or wear a scarf,
yes,
or a mask when you go out, and wash your hands when you come in, that would be absolutely, absolutely phenomenal.
Use your scarf.
So this has been Abram Chamberlain. I'm at Mind of Abram, and Evan Ream. He is creatively enough at Evan Ream. Go ahead and follow us online. We're at the First 11 Pod. You can follow our network, which I don't think exists anymore. It's at VAASP. Go ahead and follow the Red Podcast at what is it? At tmrpod.com. This has been episode 39 of the First 11, and we're sorry.